Hi, this is Tom Rush with John Broughton on Retrospectives on 3SER KC Radio.
There's no regrets, no tears goodbye.
Hey.
All right. You studied at Harvard University, younger years?
That's true.
What were you studying there?
Well, I was at the college studying English literature. I was going to be a marine biologist, actually, and come work off your reefs. But the introductory biology course there was so bad that it killed any interest I had, and I had to suddenly come up with what my major was going to be, and I picked English, sort of drew it out of the air.
And about what age were you when you started to develop a taste for music, and in particular folk and blues?
Well, I started taking piano lessons when I was pretty young, probably about 6 or 7, and I took piano for 12 years, and really didn't enjoy it at all. It was like learning to touch type. I got pretty good at it, but it wasn't fun. I mean, I got good at the touch typing part. And then a cousin of mine, an older cousin, introduced me to the ukulele, and he was a lot of fun, so the ukulele was a lot of fun. And there was then a short step to the guitar, and this was in the late 50s when all that wonderful rock and roll stuff was happening.
Yeah.
So I got an electric guitar, and I tried to be Gene Vincent and the Everly Brothers and, Chuck Berry and all those people. Didn't do terribly well at that. And then I heard a Josh White recording, guy playing an acoustic guitar singing folk songs, and I'd never heard songs like that. I'd never heard a guitar played like that. So I decided I wanted to sound just like Josh White. And that didn't work out either, but the love of that music was enduring. And when I got to Cambridge, there were all kinds of people playing and singing much more authentic folk music. Josh White was kind of commercial, on the commercial end of the scale. And so I got into that and spent probably much too much time hanging around the coffee houses.
Must have been an exciting place to be, though, that Coffeehouse circuit around that time. What are your main memories of it?
It was a wonderful time. There was one place called the Club 47 in particular where a lot of the local artists sang, and a lot of the visiting firemen, the new faces from New York and around the country would show up. But it also hosted a lot of the legends of folk music, some of the folks that are no longer with us today. The Carter family would play there, and Sleepy John Estes, and we had cowboy singers and Irish, Scottish balladeers, and all kind. It was a wonderful array of talent from the previous generation, and then you got to hear the younger generation just starting out.
Must have been a real feeling or sense of community among the performers on the circuit as well.
Yeah, there was. Cambridge was kind of an odd scene. It was an amateur scene in the original positive sense of the word. New York was a little bit more commercially oriented. People wanted to get outfits and get their act together and go on the road. Cambridge was mainly people who were students or typewriter repairmen or psychopharmacologists who played music for the fun of it and really didn't have any intention of making a living at it. So it was kind of more fun because of that, I think.
I always thought that more so than a lot of your contemporaries at the time, you had a real feeling for blues. Is that a music form that you also discovered at a relatively young age? Well, that I found, hanging out at the Club 47 and some of the other coffee houses, because you did get to hear Mississippi John Hurt and Sleepy John Estes and Jesse Fuller up close. And their stuff was just wonderful. Most of my contemporaries in Cambridge were kind of specialists. People would do Woody Guthrie songs, or they would do Delta blues, or they would do cowboy songs or Irish ballads. And I was more of a generalist. I picked a song from here and a song from there, so I did a little of this and a little of that. But blues, I'm still having a lot of fun with. One thing you've been very well known for over the years is bringing songs by the likes of Joni MItchell and Jackson Browne to the attention of the music world when they were young and unknown. Do you remember any particular instances on how you discovered them and their work? Well, Joni I met in Detroit, Michigan. I was playing a club called the Chessmate, and Joni came in. She was living in Detroit and playing occasionally, I guess, at the Chessmate. And she came in and asked the owner if she could do a guest set so that I could hear her.
and I was blown away by her songs and started doing a couple of them. Started trying to get, I had her travel around and open shows for me on the East Coast, and tried to get different record companies interested. I remember Elektra turned her down, because they said she sounded too much like Judy Collins, which she probably did at that point. She was heavily influenced by Judy, but still, in all, the songs were just so great that I couldn't understand why they didn't sign her up on the spot. James Taylor I met through my producer at that time, Paul Rothschild, and we our paths had almost crossed dozens of times over the years, but never quite. And Paul introduced us, and we sat around in a vacant office in the Elektra office complex. It was a room with no furniture at all, and we sat on the floor, and he played me songs, and I had a little tape recorder and taped them, and I think I ended up recording about 3 of those. He was then, I think, the next day on his way to England, where he teamed up with Apple and made his first real record over there.
And Jackson?
Jackson Browne was published by Elektra Records, and so I never actually met him, but I got to hear all his publishing demos.
Oh, yeah.
And recorded some of his stuff, and he occasionally would send me a tape of something new. I didn't actually meet him for quite a while, because initially he was not interested in being a performer. He just wanted to be a writer and hang around Southern California. Later he decided to start performing, and I think it was at that stage when he was on the road that we actually met, although I don't recall precisely when or where.
Good feeling for you, though, in later years to hear some of these people cite you as a major influence on them.
Well, it's very flattering. It's very flattering. For some reason, Garth Brooks credits me as being an early influence, which is, I don't know quite what to make of that. I've never met the man, but he said he listened to my stuff a lot when he was a youngster.
That knack that you've had over the years of being able to spot young songwriting talent must be something that you pride yourself on, having a good ear for a song?
Well, actually, no. Maybe I should work on that. But I'm always, I'm looking for good songs. I'm not necessarily trying to discover writers. Good songs, however, usually come attached to a good writer.
Of course, yeah. Although
I must say that Joni, Jackson, and James were very impressive in that they just kept cranking out wonderful song after wonderful song. A lot of the other tunes I've done are by people who've never written another one that I was interested in. They did one good one and that was it. Which is fine. That one good one's sure better than nothing. But and it serves my purposes. But I've never really been in the, considered myself to be in the business of discovering talent. I'm just looking for songs I can do.
Is there any particular quality in a song that has to be there for you to want to be one that you want to cover?
I wish I could give you an answer to that, because it would make my life a lot easier if I could call up a publishing company and say, I'm looking for this kind of song. The only common denominator that I've been able to figure out is visual imagery. I like Bo Diddley's I Wear a Cobra Snake for a Necktie. Mm-hmm. And I also like Joni Mitchell's I Woke Up Today and Found the Frost Perched on the Town. Very different songs, but the visual imagery is strong in both of them, and in most of the songs I do.
Cool. Any young writers around today that have grabbed your attention?
There are lots and lots. Not necessarily ones whose songs I feel I can do, but Patty Larkin, you probably know most of the names.
Yeah.
Gillian Welch, I think, is
yes.
coming on strong. Bill Morrissey does good work. Cheryl Wheeler is one of my favorites. I don't know if she's ever gotten down to Australia, but
no, I don't think so.
She's a wonderful singer, songwriter, instrumentalist, but she's also extremely funny on stage, and it's just a delight to hear her play.
At what point in time do you think you really began to develop a confidence in your own songwriting?
Well, I'm still working on that. I actually started writing in the folk tradition, where you take a line from here and a line from there. Most blues and a lot of the folk songs have verses that float around and appear in different songs. And so I would gather together a lot of existing stuff, maybe add a verse or two and call it my own, which was a perfectly acceptable way to do it in the folk world. And then I started actually composing stuff from whole cloth, and that's hard work. And I'm still not writing anywhere near as much as I think I should. But I just, it's hard work, and finding ways to avoid it occupies most of my time.
You were recording in predominantly traditional material in an acoustic vein, and then later you started moving on to more contemporary material. What inspired that move for you?
Well, I kind of felt that I'd mined out the traditional music vein. I'm sure that was not true, but I'd heard, all the child ballads, and I'd heard all of the blues that had ever been recorded, and I'd heard a lot of stuff, and I probably hadn't thought about it all as intensely as I should have. But anyway, I was looking for new songs, and at that point, Joni Mitchell and James Taylor and Jackson Browne all sort of appeared in the same time frame, within a year or so of each other. And so on the album titled Circle Game, after Joni Mitchell's song, I started doing sort of contemporary takes on folk material. These songs sounded folky. They were informed by the folk traditions, but they were original and poetic in a literary kind of way, or literate kind of way. And it was a very, very powerful, to me, combination of flavors.
I think when people talk of your recorded output, I think the Circle Game album is one that's probably often mentioned, or most mentioned. Would you say that was a turning point in your career in terms of greater acceptance?
Well, it was the first one that I'm trying to think back to what was actually going on at that time. It was a step forward, but I don't think right at the moment it was a particular leap forward. It was in retrospect that Rolling Stone said this was a watershed project, in that it allegedly introduced the singer-songwriter era. I don't know if that's so or not. I don't know. I think the album sold better than previous albums, but not head and shoulders better. Then, after I'd made that, I moved over to Columbia Records, and their marketing machinery was so much more powerful that I started selling a lot more copies then, but I'm not sure if it was me or if it was them.
Now, Trevor Beach was a guitarist you worked a fair bit with over the years?
Yeah, absolutely.
Where did you meet up?
I met him in Toronto, a club owner up there. I had a bass player who had a beard, and the club that I was playing at was called the Riverboat, and the owner said, "I know a guitar player who looks just like your bass player. He'd be terrific." He was very visually oriented. And he introduced me to Trevor, who also had black hair and a beard, and coincidentally happened to be an absolutely brilliant musician. And we worked together then for many years and had a lot of good times.
Now, you're based in Wyoming these days. How's life there for you in comparison to New Hampshire?
Oh, it's pretty wild and woolly out here.
Yeah.
We got a foot and a half of snow last night. That's a small storm.
Small storm.
Yeah, and it's a long commute. Most of my work is in other parts of the country, just because there's hardly any people in Wyoming. It's a gigantic state geographically, but nobody lives here, which is part of its appeal. But I have to travel long distances to get to work.
I believe you left New Hampshire after some unfortunate circumstances. Fire?
Well, yeah, I'd been through the ragged end of an unfortunate marriage, and well, actually, I just moved out here. I'd been here for about a week when the house and caught fire back in New Hampshire. It wasn't the fire that moved me.
Oh, right.
It just happened to happen.
It happened to happen. What's your songwriting pattern? Do you carry them around with you for a while before you get them down, or do you write in bursts, or?
I tend to write in bursts. I also carry things around in various states of incompletion. In the best of worlds, I would get up in the morning, sit down with a cup of coffee and play the guitar and stare at the guitar and scratch out things for maybe 4 hours every day. If I do that, I get songs written. It's very hard for me to write when I'm on the road because there's just not time to really focus on anything for an extended period on a regular basis.
And roughly how much time would you spend on the road during the course of the year?
I do maybe 50 or 60 shows a year, but the traveling on top of that, especially traveling out of Wyoming, a remote location, takes up quite a bit of time. It takes me, I'm going to Philadelphia tomorrow. I've got to leave tomorrow, which is Friday for me, to play on Saturday, and then come home on Sunday. So it takes me 3 days to do a 2-hour show.
And the types of venues you're playing these days?
It's all over the lot. I'm playing some small clubs because I enjoy them. The money isn't really very persuasive, but it's fun to play for a crowd that's up close that you can actually talk to. And in the Philadelphia show that I'm doing in a couple of days, it's I think a 500 or 600 seat concert hall. I play some larger rooms than that. I play some smaller rooms. I play some festivals during the summer. It's a lot of variety, which I enjoy.
And mainly solo or with a backing?
About half solo and half with one accompanist. I'm working now with a keyboard player who also plays saxophone and several other instruments and sings, and is a lot of fun to work with, a fellow named Joe Monona.
Any possibilities of a Down Under visit? I don't think we've had the pleasure of having
I would love it. What I need is somebody to hire me.
Yeah, that helps, doesn't it?
You find me somebody to hire me, and I'll be there in a shot.
Now, I was reading with interest some special concerts that you do on occasion, the Club 47 concerts.
Right.
They sound like rather special events. Can you tell us a little bit about those?
Right. Well, the name, of course, refers back to this coffee house in Cambridge where I started out, and where you could hear not only the new voices, but some of the old timers, the legends. And the Club 47 concerts essentially are myself as the singing MC, a couple of well-known artists with some history behind them, and a couple of newcomers who are musically compatible with the geezers. Because I try to get everybody to come, number one, without their band, and number two, with an open mind towards playing and singing with one another and doing spontaneous things that they don't normally do in their concert set. And so we get kind of a musical party going, and we daisy chain the acts together. There's no break in between acts. Each act introduces the next act. They do something together, and then the first act disappears and the second act takes over, and so forth.
And who are some of the people that have been involved in those?
Oh, I was just making up a list the other day, which I don't have in front of me, but Bonnie Raitt's done them with me, Emmylou Harris, Joan Baez, Richie Havens. Some of the newcomers actually have been people like Nancy Griffith and Alison Krauss and Patty Larkin, and I'm drawing a blank now, but there are several current heavyweights who sort of cut their teeth in the Club 47 shows. They're great for an up and coming act because it gets them from a coffeehouse stage immediately onto the stage of, so let's say, Carnegie Hall in New York or the Kennedy Center in Washington, where they're going to get reviewed by the important newspaper. It may only be one line because there are a lot of acts on the bill, but if it's a good line, that gives them a tremendous boost in terms of getting them onto the concert circuit as opposed to the club circuit.
Ever pondered the idea of recording some of them for release?
Well, in fact, I have done. I recorded one. There was one that was actually a PBS special, public television special here in the States with David Bromberg and Emmylou Harris, a duo called Buskin and Bateau, and myself. The recording thing's a bit of a problem because the established artists, of course, have record deals with them, and then you've got to dicker with their record companies, and things tend to get bogged down in the dickering.
Yeah. Still have the same excitement and appeal for you as, say, it would have 30 years ago?
I love it.
Yeah.
I still really get a charge out of getting up in front of an audience and making a fool of myself. The traveling, I have less enthusiasm for. There was a time when I was 23 when I thought taking 12 airplanes a week was a lot of fun, and I've learned better.
Yeah, novelty wears off after a while.
Oh, it does.
Yeah. I believe you're highly in demand for voiceover work too.
Well, I don't know about highly, but I've started doing some of that. That sort of fell out of the sky. Somebody called me up from a big advertising agency, said they were a fan of mine and had my records from way back, and would I like to do the voice for an ad they were making? And it just sort of went on from there. It was totally an accident.
Snowballed.
But it's great work. It's way too much money for hardly any effort, and it allows you some slack and other things.
Sure. So how else does Tom Rush spend his time away from music, given the opportunity?
Away from music?
Yeah.
Well, I'm never that far away. I would prefer to be a little closer. I get involved in all sorts of projects that I enjoy, but take up time.
If you had to pin it down to one thing, what you would be the key to survival in the music game for as long as you've been around? Having fun. Enjoying your work.
I think if you have fun doing it, then your audience will have fun, and you'll keep on keeping on.
Any new recordings on the horizon?
I'm ready to go in the studio. I'm waiting for my manager to work out a label deal, and if he doesn't do that in a fairly short amount of time, I'm tempted to record it on my own label. I've done the past few releases on my own label, and it's fun, it's lucrative, but it takes up way too much time, and it has nothing to do with playing the guitar.
Fair enough. And just to finish up, Tom, any regrets? Anything you'd love to go back and change, given the opportunity?
No regrets.
No regrets.
No, I don't think I have any substantial ones. There's a couple of songs out there I wish I'd written instead of whoever wrote them, but
can't change that.
Can't change that.
Fair enough too. Okay, Tom, look, I won't hold you up any longer. I'll let you enjoy your Thanksgiving holiday, and a happy Thanksgiving to you.
Well, thank you very much. And I would, again, love to come to Australia.
I will be here waiting for you.
If any of your listeners want to hire me, I'll be there.
We'll put the word out.
Okay.
We'll be here with bells on waiting for you.
Terrific.
Thanks a lot, Tom. All the best.
Thank you.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.